We all love a good reboot, don't we? Don't we? For monster trucks, reboots are actually somewhat common. The grip of nostalgia even reaches the motorsports world, and very often people want to see the names they grew up with return to the stage. And some of us are delusional dreamers. Plenty of names have come back from extinction. Pun totally intended, Jurassic Attack is a prime example. However, it's rare for a truck to be brought back from extinction twice. What's even rarer is when that truck is brought back again and it's actually competitive twice. Let's also talk about the longest running names. Bigfoot, of course, takes the cake, now chalking up 50 years of active competition. Gravedigger isn't far behind with 43 years. However, one name that has been synonymous debuted 40 years ago this year, Excalibur. And yes, that is with an E. Google Docs ain't gonna be happy about that. A truck that started off as one of the first real trucks to contest with Bigfoot, and now all these years later still running on the biggest floors. However, for many years we were worried it was going to be gone away, having been retired for an 8-year, then an 11-year interval. Nearly half the time spent since its debut has it laid shelved. And yet, like the steel the sword it was named after, it has kept strong. So let's take a look at the history of Excalibur. Our story begins not in England, but in Ohio, where two men, Mike Nickel and Dave Marquardt, caught wind of their Midwest neighbors Bob Chandler and Fred Schaefer starting up a new type of vehicle, the monster truck. However, these two were savvy, as Excalibur was the first truck designed in CAD. It's easy nowadays when you can get Blender for free. However, back then, this is what CAD looked like.
Construction of three-dimensional solid model.
These two somehow designed a monster truck with this. One side note too. Apparently, a young man who was delivering newspapers would pass by their shop to check in on their progress building the truck, as he had a shared interest in lifted trucks as well. Keep note of this. They must have done one hell of a job designing too, because even in its early days, this thing would be ran hard. Bear in mind too, back then, unless you were named Bigfoot, Barefoot, or King Kong, even crawling over the cars was an accomplishment, especially if it didn't break on the descent. But Excalibur wasn't afraid of soaring over the cars, and it actually could take the punishment dished out more times than not. The truck would score an early victory in 1986 over Bigfoot, and as monster trucks first started getting televised exposure, Excalibur would be an early favorite on the USHRA tour. The team wasn't afraid of going all out, and before Dennis Anderson got his reputation for sending his truck, Excalibur showed how the fans appreciate all-out driving. However, what couldn't take the punishment was the drivers, as Mike Nickel broke his back not once, but twice. These old trucks were horrific on the spine, and it showed. Dave Marquardt would continue to drive as the truck would debut its iconic black scheme, which, for the most part, would be the hallmark of every future iteration. Remember that young man with the paper routes? Well, in 1987, they would hire to help him fill in for Mike, thinking, hey, the kid's got enthusiasm. Maybe he could show us a thing or two. Plus, youthful dexterity may be helpful. That kid's name, Charlie Pauken. Look, I'm not going to bury the lead here. Charlie Pauken is one of the greatest drivers of all time, period. Anyone who tries to argue otherwise will likely be shot on sight for high treason. I do plan on doing a full video of his career, because what he would do not only in this truck but beyond is simply legendary. There's many opinions in the sport, but I think one of the few universals is how much people love and appreciate Charlie Pauken. The truck around this time too would actually roll over in a body of water. To my knowledge, one of only two trucks to ever do so, the other being Cardiff Giant also during the mid-1980s. The truck mercifully would be mechanically sound, but I imagine a few hits of the drive act probably helped. One thing to note too is during this time the two biggest promoters were TNT and USHRA, with around this time TNT becoming more prominent. While cross-pollination was common, Excalibur were by and large USHRA loyalists, and while they would get airtime through the late 80s, the more monster truck racing focused TNT would be the primary topic, as they had the names like USA, Equalizer, and Gravedigger, with really only Bigfoot across both due to their size having both hands in the honeypots. By 1989, the young Chuck Pauken would become more and more prominent, as both Mike and Dave were really feeling the pain from driving the truck so hard over these last few years. The truck would go on a diet through 1990, but in 1991 they would debut the new Excalibur, with a more racing-themed design. Although still leaf spring, this truck was much more advanced and lighter than its old counterpart, which in turn kept the truck competitive. What happened to the original? Well, the plan was for Dave to drive the new one while Chuck got the original as a hand-me-down. However, in 1991 at the Albany Civic Center in Georgia, the throttle would stick and slam into a wall with an awning and would be destroyed. Looking at these photos, it's absolutely haunting, but the fact Charlie not only survived, but minus a broken toe, would be for the most part uninjured is insane. After seeing this, the team would give Pauken the new truck and the original would be retired following this incident. By this time as well, Tim Busch, who owned the Michigan Ice Monster name, would also buy the operation, meaning by around this time it was Tim working the operations and Pauken behind the wheel, as Mike and Dave would see their creation go beyond their wildest dreams. While Pauken would run on some of the bigger floors, including the gigantic Louisville Motor Speedway, it would be the burgeoning Thunder Nationals where Excalibur would leave its mark. Drivers like Bill Weaver, Scott Hess, Mike Vaughters, and Marty Garza alongside Pauken helped take the promotion to its top heights, with Pauken winning 4 titles including 3 in a row from 1993 through 1995. The truck was by far the most dominant machine on that circuit and became in essence the Bigfoot or gravedigger of that promotion, and given the tremendous talent that was housed in these concrete cathedrals, that's saying something. Excalibur did secure a massive win in Pontiac in 1993 as well, defeating Bigfoot in the Invitational division, showcasing more of Pauken's raw talent. With the 1990s rolling on, Excalibur secured itself as one of the best in the Midwest, and with the occasional stadium event also allowed the team the opportunity to stretch its legs. However, after the 1998 season, Pauken would actually retire and the operation would be sold to Bruce Haney, who would convert the truck to Bad News Travels Fast. Yeah, this is where the first real incarnation of Excalibur ends. Haney would fittingly compete on Thunder Nationals frequently as well until acquiring a new PEI in 2004. Hey, it's a decorated piece, why not shoot for more success? Pauken's retirement, however, would be insanely short-lived, as the following year he would be drafted to drive Gravedigger, where he would go on to tremendous success even well beyond what he could have done in Excalibur now that all the damage was on a company dime. Tim Busch around 2003 actually planned a revitalization of his own using the old Sandman chassis from Rick Disharu, but this would be scrapped. Really, aside from the photos you're seeing now thanks to Truck World Online, we would have no evidence of this happening aside from conjecture. However, it would be around 2006 the next stage of this journey would begin. Starting in 2006 on the old Sudden Impact chassis, the team of the same name would begin campaigning Excalibur, at first on a Ford driven by Sean Duhan, then a newer gen chassis back on a traditional Chevy driven by John Killinger and Christy Edge, making her the first woman to drive Excalibur. With the rise of the team's clout with John Zimmer at the helm of Shock Therapy, the truck really began to pick up the most steam it had since its retirement 11 years prior. However, in 2010 this would mark the biggest change. See, retro designs are way more commonplace nowadays, but back in 2010 this was rare and it showed, as that year the team would debut a throwback design with Carl Van Horn behind the wheel to rapturous praise. This damn near broke the internet, and CVH would also back up the lineage with securing a racing win in Jacksonville, the truck's first televised win under Moss Jam since, the mid-90s? John would drive the truck in Pontiac at one of the final events at the Silverdome, as the truck would have a revolving door as a driver, with CVH return to Gravedigger, marking the second Excalibur driver on the team, spoiler alert, it won't be the last, with drivers like Chris Ryan, David Brown, and Kevin Casala taking the helm. Bear in mind, though, during this time Tim Busch still held the identity, which in late 2012, the truck will be segued over to RB Muller's team with John Zimmer piloting for the summer at various events before, oh hey, look at that! Sadly in 2012 as well, Dave Marquardt, who was integral for the truck's early successes, would pass away at the much too young age of 51, and while his passing was untimely, he left behind a legacy that truly cannot be taken away. During this time as well, you would see a ride truck donning the name under Pauken's ownership at Monster Truck Throwdown events. Really, after 2012, this was it, as Excalibur as a race entity would once again be shelved. The truck had its revitalization, and unfortunately, because of interworking screwiness, it would be shelved once again. Still though, had the story ended here, it would have been great to say a legendary name came back to life and got to entertain a new generation of fans. Pauken, Marquardt posthumously, and Nickel would all be inducted into the Monster Truck Hall of Fame later in the decade. Come circa 2021, and Tim would, after having the rights to the name for almost 30 years, sell to whom? The Pagliarulas from Deltona, Florida, as they had plans to bring back the name. And while it took some time, during the World Finals in 2023, the new Excalibur will be unveiled, and its pilot in its first competition in Mansfield, where 31 years prior, Pauken damn near was taken out literally by Rambo. Seriously, they found tire marks on Charlie's helmet. Pauken nearly died for the sport twice. Don't question his seat at the table of the greatest of all time. He would have his son, also named Chucky, aka CP3, drive the truck in a beautiful full circle moment. The truck would run intermittently, but by 2025 would be announced to be driven full-time by Mike Pagliarulo as Chucky Pauken joined FELD Motorsports, founded by former Excalibur alumni John Zimmer. Mike would do the name honor, securing its first stadium win in 15 years, fittingly enough also in Florida, this time in Miami in freestyle. The truck is still running strong even to this day, and much like how the likes of another Mike did well before its current driver was even born, Mike Pag shows if you have no guts, you've got no glory. One final full circle moment. It was revealed in 2021 that Pauken has the second-gen Excalibur chassis, and while he plans to restore it, it's still a work in progress as he's busy continuing to be him driving Gravedigger overseas. There's something truly special about seeing a truck that's been around longer than I've been alive in person. Sure, there's names like Gravedigger and Bigfoot, but Excalibur is one of a dying breed, one that only a handful of names that are still active and a rare group of those names that are still performing at a top level today. However, I think that's a testament to the respect this name deserves. In an era where simple movements would break a truck, this team was never afraid to go hard, and as it's evolved over the last 40 years, that mantra has still stayed ever present with the team. I do also have to give it props being in the hands of the Pagliarulos and how Tim Bush handled the name. How long the name will run is hard to say, but I'm glad that unlike my Bulldozer video, I get to end this on a happy note, where brains won the same as the foot on the throttle. The mantra has remained the same. If you've got no guts, you've got no glory. Anyways, I've gone off track, and I'll see you all next time.